Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mayor's Community Policy Trust. I am former Flagstaff Mayor, Dr. Coral Evans, and with me today is former Sedona Mayor, Sandy Moriarty. Did I say that last name right, Mayor?
I'll teach you how to say my last name as my first first job here today. So you think of two guys named Maury and
Mori?
Artie and Artie. And you
Moriarty.
say them together, yes.
Moriarty. Well, I'm
Yeah.
here today with former Sedona Mayor, Sandy Moriarty,
Hmm.
and we are here to have a conversation about compromise, about how to be involved with our community, and also what statesmanship looks like in action. So I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We had a great backstage conversation, for lack of a better way of putting it, and so we're just going to kind of just jump right in. Can you just kind of tell us, like, how did you get involved with politics?
Well, I've lived in Sedona for 52 years, and we've been incorporated for I think I'm not sure quite how long it's been. It's like over 30, I think. So I think we got incorporated in 1988, and I've been here since 72. So a long time that I've been in Sedona. And I started right away after I got here. I started looking at a way to get incorporated because we're in, and I'll tell you part of the reason that instigated it was Sedona is in two counties. And at
Mhm.
the time when we first got incorporated, I think we were the only ones. And we actually had to get legislation passed at the state level to allow us to incorporate across county lines.
So what was the desire to incorporate, though? You were kind of like a county island, you were an area, but what made it so important that you set out with a team of other residents to try to get incorporation and to ultimately get it?
Yes, the being in two counties, it was like if you wanted to do anything like get a permit of some kind, you had to go to if your house about Sedona's about one third in Coconino County. That's the eastern part of Sedona, near the creek, and the other two thirds in Yavapai. So if you lived in Yavapai, you went to Cottonwood to get a permit. If you lived in the on the other side of town, you had to go to Flagstaff because that's Coconino County. So you had to go two different places depending on what you wanted to do to get anything done. Any of the things that you think of as the function of a city or town, we weren't a city or town. And so that's I thought, well, we need to be incorporated so that we have at least consolidated where we go to get anything done. That was really my initial reason.
So what was your background? I mean, had you been in politics before, county or city government?
No, I had not. I had
Wow. So
so no.
you just had a desire and a willingness and to want to make your community better.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
did you become mayor of Sedona?
Um. Nobody else was that. There was one other person running at the time, and I didn't really think that he would do a great job. And I talked to a lot of people and tried to get them to run, and I couldn't find anybody. So finally, I kept saying to him, well, you need to step up and do this. And finally, I said to myself, I guess I need to step up and do this.
So
So
were
that
you the first mayor of the city after it was incorporated?
was I? Let's see. I know. No, I don't think so. No, there were other mayors because we just used to, and Sedona did not elect its mayor directly either in the beginning.
Okay, so how did
It
that work?
it was the council that chose the mayor. The
Okay.
existing council chose the mayor.
All right.
Yeah.
There are some cities that have that where the council members are elected and
Hmm.
then the elected body chooses who will serve as mayor.
That's right. Among the members of the council, and that's what we did. And then at some point I think we had a couple of elections. We had an election to make it directly elected, and then I think we tried. There was a couple of elections after that to go back to not doing it, and neither one of those worked. So it's just been direct election for quite a while now.
And how long were you mayor?
I was mayor for 8 years.
That's a long time to be mayor.
It was. I can't say I'm sorry not to be mayor anymore. I'm used to it now. I'm used to being a regular person again. But, mayor is one of those titles that once you have it, you never lose it.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those titles that you never lose. And it's one of those titles that people continue to ask questions and ask you to be on shows and ask you to talk about policy, such as we're doing today.
Right.
When I reached out to you, I really wanted to have this conversation because I had the opportunity to work with you as mayor, and I thought that you were incredible. I watched you in some very difficult spaces, in difficult conversations, and I watched you really advocate. It was centered around the issue of short-term rentals. That's when I really got a chance to know you. And I wanted to talk today about how we navigate, or how you navigated some of the difficult conversations. I just kind of threw that out there because I knew that that was one of them. But I'm sure that even throughout the concept of incorporating the city of Sedona, you must have had several difficult conversations. And so how did you handle those, and how did you look at those? How did you go? What was your mindset going into these conversations?
I guess I'm pretty goal oriented, and I just wanted Sedona to be a city, and and when I wanted to be the mayor, it was because someone else was running who I didn't think would make a good mayor, and so I decided I needed to get into that race. And remind me what question you just asked me. How did I get into it?
Yeah. Well, how did you handle these difficult conversations?
Oh, difficult conversations. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's just part of my nature. It doesn't. I'm panic impaired for one thing, so I think that is a good quality for a mayor. Frankly, I don't panic. I never have panic. Well, I guess I learned at some point in my life that I'm panic impaired, and I still think that's important. But I just think that I can somehow naturally do that sort of thing. It's not easy, but you have to have some courage to say what you think, and that's something I've always been accused of, you might say, is saying what I think. I don't hesitate to say what I think.
And so how do you manage to, because I go back to the concept of incorporating a city, there has to have been a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different wants. There had to be people that were not interested in having the area incorporated. How did you manage to bring all those voices to the table, make sure that they had the opportunity to speak? How did you ferret out the information that you needed, and maybe what information was more self-serving, if that's a correct term to use?
Well, as Sedona's in 2 counties, and a lot of people, there aren't now. I think there's about statewide. I think there's about 8 communities that are in 2 counties, but I think when we got incorporated, I think we were among the first, because we had to get legislation passed to say we could incorporate across county lines, and so I don't know. It wasn't. I just was interested when I came to Sedona. I could see the way the town functioned was not the best, because we were in 2 counties. So part of the population had to go to Coconino County when they wanted something done, and the other part of the community had to go to Yavapai, to Cottonwood in Yavapai County. So it was either go up the hill to Flagstaff or go over to Cottonwood to where the county seat was in Cottonwood. Well, the county seat's actually in Prescott over the mountain, but there was an office in Cottonwood. So it didn't make much sense to me to think that was the way things had to work. So that got me interested in incorporation, and I found the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. And the league at that time, Kathy Connolly and Jack Dabolsky were there, and they came up to Sedona. And actually, they came up to Clarkdale and gave a class on incorporation, because Cottonwood was already incorporated, but I think it was the only one. Well, maybe Clark.
Wow.
maybe Clarkdale was too. There's basically 5 communities in the Verde Valley, and both Sedona and Camp Verde are relatively newly incorporated. And then Jerome's been a town for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but of course it's very small. And Clarkdale is also relatively small. So, but Camp Verde and Sedona both incorporated relatively recently.
So how did you get people to the table to discuss it? Was it just something that everybody wanted? Was there people who did not want to be incorporated?
Oh, sure. There were people that didn't want it. There's always people that don't want. It's rare to have everybody on your side. I don't know that I've ever seen a situation where everybody agreed on anything. So you just have to do it. I don't know that I made a decision to get people together. I just decided I wanted to do it.
Okay. Well, then how did you attract people to the cause? I guess maybe that's a better way of framing it.
I did know other people who were interested in it at the time. I knew a few other people who were interested. So we did kind of get together and do that. And as I say, then I took this class from the League of Arizona Cities and Towns about incorporation, and they have a little booklet called How to Incorporate or something like that. And I got that, and I started following the steps. And it took I put together 3 different committees. I'm not sure I put them all together, but I served on them over a 15-year period to get incorporated. It didn't happen quickly. And it was 3 different committees and then in between the committees would be a period of at least 2 or 3 years. So it was a long time in between, and it just took time.
Okay, so this wasn't something that happened overnight. Now you're looking at a 15-year process that you were involved in. And so, I mean, when you look at the way government works, there are a lot of things that take time. And we have a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but there's some people that definitely think government should be faster. Government should be quicker to do different things. What do you say to that when you hear that?
Nothing happens quickly. Nothing worthwhile happens quickly. You know, there are some things, but nothing substantive in the terms of government. Government just, I don't believe most people understand how government works, and I don't expect to change that ever. I don't expect that to change ever, because people just don't. They want what they want, and usually they want it right now, and that just isn't ever going to happen. So you just have to just go about your business and do what you can do, but you can only do so much. And you can only do it so quickly. And yeah, nothing happens quickly.
Yeah, when I was mayor, I used to tell people that I definitely believe that government should be efficient and effective, right? And maximize public dollars and maximize the time that our citizens spend interacting, going to council meetings and things like that. But some things do take time. And the reason why they take time is because you want to make sure they're done correctly. Because if they're not done correctly, they can have long-term, long-lasting negative impacts, right? And you want to do the best to minimize whatever negative impacts and to make sure that you're actually moving things forward in a way that's beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Nothing happens fast. Nothing happens fast.
What do you think about the concept of compromise? You know, I'm sitting here thinking about, you know, the incorporation of Sedona. I know that there's been a couple of other like hot topics that you've been involved in. And, you know, when people talk about compromise, it seems like nobody wants to compromise nowadays.
No, compromise is tough for most people. But to me, politics is compromise. It just is. The nature of politics is compromise. You have to compromise to do anything. So I have always believed in compromise. It's not a dirty word like some people think it is, but it's totally necessary, and it has to happen.
What is an example that you can give us of something that, you know, that you had to compromise, or a I don't know, a vote, policy, something that you compromised on because you thought it was for the best?
Everything. Literally everything. I never, as I say, I always believed in compromise. I don't think, I think there's almost nothing that everyone agrees on. So you always have to compromise. In my experience, I don't remember ever, and I've said that, I remember saying that when I was on council as the mayor. I never served, by the way, on the city council. I just served as the mayor.
Okay, so you never went through the process of being on council
No,
and then being elected mayor. You just
no,
kind of went straight to mayor.
straight to mayor.
And
And
see, I'm of the mindset, and and I want to make sure that I say this correctly, but I am of the mindset. I met you, I had the opportunity to serve with you as mayor, and like I said, I think you were a great mayor. Which is another reason why I was like really bugging you about, hey, I really want to have a conversation with you live on air. I will tell you from my experience, I feel that everybody should have to go through 4 years on council before they run for mayor. That's just me personally. But you're the exception, like, you
and
know,
I
but I,
guess I know most people do, and because I worked to get Sedona Incorporated, that was a little bit like doing that.
yeah, there we go.
Because it took 15 years to get incorporated. So working on that for 15 years, I guess I felt like that got me ready. I don't know that I would have done it if I hadn't been through all of that.
See, that makes sense. I know that one of the things I talk about is having people come on council as activists. And we're going to get ready to kind of talk about, I guess, not the meat of the conversation, but what it is that I really want to talk about is this difference between activists, elected officials, and statesmen. I talk about the fact that I've had the opportunity, I served for just over 12 years on council. 4 years as mayor. And so I had the opportunity to see a lot of different councils, right? Council changes every 2 years. And
Yes,
you
yes.
had some people, myself included, right, who came in as activists, right? We came
Mhm.
in because there was one issue, there was one topic, there was one something. And it seems like some people are able to transition to being a council member, but other people are never able to transition out of the activist role. And so what do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're. I think some are more successful than others for sure. Uh, I, I, I think I've always been an activist. I mean, I don't know. It's just part of my personality that I see something that needs doing, and I believe that if I think it needs doing, I ought to be willing to participate in that.
Right.
So so that's what I did. I thought Sedona should be incorporated, and I started working on, different committees to get it incorporated. And I
Mhm.
did that for 15 years. And then when I became the mayor, the way I became the mayor was, again, I just saw somebody who was the person who was running at the time. I never had it in me. Some people would say to me, well, I guess did you always want to be the mayor? No, I didn't always want to be the mayor. I just decided because of the situation, the circumstances, I didn't see anybody decent running. No one was coming forward. One person came forward, and I didn't think that person would do a particularly good job. So that's what made me get into the race.
It's interesting that you say that because that's why I ran for mayor, right? I was like, it's not necessarily that I want to be mayor. It's just that I don't think the people that have put their name up are necessarily the right people for the totality of the community, right?
Uh-huh.
Because one thing about being a council member, I got the opportunity to really focus on, I would say, maybe specific segments of the community or things that I was super interested in, but not necessarily had to look at things from a broader lens,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Um, but when you're mayor, you have to look at things within their totality.
Uh-huh.
You can't just look at. To me, there's a difference between mayors and council members because mayors really have to look. I don't think mayors have the luxury of just looking at things in isolation.
Uh-huh.
What do you think about
Well,
that?
well, I think that's true. I think the main job of the mayor is to run the council meeting. That's the
Mhm.
main job of the mayor. It's really the only uh, defined job of the mayor. Now, you can make it what you want it, and I believe everybody does that. Anyone who
Mhm.
on makes it what they want it. But and so for me, I did it because I thought, as you said, you did too, for the same reason, that the only person who had stepped up so far wasn't going to be that good at it, and so I decided to run. But I didn't have a lifelong ambition to be a mayor. I never did. So
So I like the way you put that the mayors, I mean, according to charter, right? So is Sedona a charter city?
no, see, there aren't that many charter cities.
See,
And
Flagstaff is a charter city.
yes, I know Flagstaff is, and Phoenix is, and Tucson is, but there aren't that many of them, and they're all older cities. The newer cities, no one has a charter because, frankly, somewhere recently, I think I heard or read that some city was contemplating adopting a charter, and wow, that's an undertaking. That is an undertaking. So I knew enough about the process because of what I had learned from the League of Arizona Cities and Towns, that this is not something that happens overnight, and it just, there was no way I would have considered making Sedona a charter city. And then most newer cities are not. None of the new cities are charter cities. It's all the older cities. So I was a Flagstaff was, but
and I think that if I'm remembering right, and I don't quote me, but I think it's because Flagstaff was incorporated before Arizona, or charter cities were incorporated before Arizona was a state.
Well, I don't know
like
if that's always the case, but
I can't remember.
I don't know, frankly, either. But
yeah,
what I do know is that none of the newer cities that have incorporated, because I don't know how many cities there were in the state. I think it's somewhere around 91 now.
I think we have like 92, 93. Star Valley is a new city, a relatively new city, right?
And so it seems to me like it was more like 41 or something back. Okay. I've been in Sedona a long time, so I've been here 52 years in Sedona. So that's longer than most people have been in Sedona, for sure.
So one of the things that you said, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that, and at least I know according to our charter as well as City of Flagstaff, was that the mayor was in charge of the meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And was in charge of setting the diplomacy, the tone, the running of the meeting, calling on people. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because it does seem like public meetings have gotten a lot more contentious, that there seems to be a lack of civility among people that are coming to speak at council, sometimes among council members. I'm just talking in general to everybody who's listening, not one particular council over another. But what do you think about that? And what do you think that the role of civility plays when it comes to having these hard conversations that we ultimately have to have?
Civility is critical. I mean, you just don't get anywhere if you start yelling at people.
Yeah.
Ever good. And I do think, just in general, the whole country has become less civil over the last 4 to 6 years, something like that. It's just become, people somehow, there's a feeling of entitlement out there. Entitlement. It's no, you're not entitled. People would come and, come to council and ask things that they tell us what they thought we should do. It's like, well, that's not up to you to ask. You're not entitled to that. But people think they're entitled, and they're not.
And so what role do you think that we as elected are no longer elected officials, but what role do you think elected officials play in setting the tone when it comes to civility and when it comes to really allowing everybody to be engaged in the process? I remember there was a couple of meetings, right, where you would have one side show up, for example. It would be something that would be majorly, it would be controversial. And I remember you would have like literally maybe 200 people show up on one side of the issue, pick an issue. And then you would have maybe 5 or 6 people show up on the other side. And, people trying, and so someone would stand up and they would say something that was not popular in the room. And, people trying to boo, or it was very negative. And it was like, hey, we are here as a community. We need to make sure we hear all sides, because there's not one side, there's not two sides. There's usually a plethora of opinions to something,
Absolutely.
and opinions they're different. And so, what role do elected officials play in making sure that all people are represented?
I don't know that you can make sure all people are represented. I don't think it's possible, frankly. So you can do your best, but when it comes to having a bunch of people show up, they're on one side. That did happen. Sometimes they'd be out the door and into the lobby, at City Hall. And I actually had a rule, which I guess I got off council just in time because I understand that I couldn't have had it. But my rule was I didn't allow people to applaud. No applause is allowed was my rule. That rule has gone by the board since I left council. So I'm glad, because that saved me on many occasions. I would just say, sorry, no clapping is allowed when they started. And I'd nip it in the bud at the beginning when they started doing it, and then nobody would do it. It worked very well. Unfortunately, apparently it's not legal to do that.
Because I think it now falls under what is it, First Amendment speech or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I'm just happy that I was able to get away with it while I was the mayor.
Because we had a no clapping rule too. We had
Yeah.
that as well, and then you could do this. But okay, so in understanding that you cannot guarantee that everybody gets a right to speak, right? And so, you'll get the emails that come in that seem to come in from one group of people or another group of people. How did you then make your decisions? Did you make your decisions based off of, I remember having a conversation with someone and they're like, well, you got 500 emails in support of this, so that is the way we expected you to vote. And I was like, I realized we got 500 emails because we did. I go, we also got 497 approximately that stated the opposite. And there's 85,000 people that live in the area that we're making this decision on. And, a lot of people, there's a concept of, people voted for you, right? But then and you're the mayor of those people. But then there's all the people that did not vote for you. And there's a whole bunch of people that couldn't vote for you under the age of 18, undocumented, background, felonies and stuff like that. So how did you make sure that when you made a decision, you were making a decision based the best decision you could make? Does that make sense? The question?
Well, it absolutely is not based on how many people show up. That's another thing. The people showing up to the meeting, and you get a crowd, like I say, a big crowd of people, and they're all in favor of one particular side of a topic. Well, that just doesn't matter to me. I just ignored that. I just ignored how many people there were in the room. It's not relevant to making my decision, because for every, well, okay, so you're here. How many people, like you said, how many people are there out there that aren't here? There's more people that aren't here than are, by a major amount. More people that aren't here that are. So I don't make my decision based on that.
And it's been unfortunate because I've seen council members, or I believe I've seen council members that make decisions based off of, I guess I would say, popularity, maybe.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's a lot when you have 400 people in a room, and they are, there's a wave of energy, right? And they're pretty clear about what it is that they want. And you're like, but that's not the best decision to make. It can be very hard.
It's not. Well, I just, I guess I'm just, it doesn't bother me to do that. I feel very strongly that is not what the decision should be based on. So we were provided when I was on, still every city does this. They provide the mayor and council members with a packet of information from the staff. That's what I based my decision on, was mainly what was in the packet, and just what I know from what I do know on my own. But I relied on the information in the packet. I relied on the city manager to, I'm in the sunlight where I'm sitting here, so I'm going to have to move.
Okay.
So I'm going to get up and walk, but I can still talk, maybe, if I can see if I can do two things at a time. So yeah, I just very strongly believe in not making. I don't make it on the basis of what my friends think, and I don't think most people should make anything on that, make any decision on that basis. You don't make it based on that. You make it based on the information you have on the topic you're discussing. So in the packet was all the staff is very good, and the city manager. I worked for two of the best city managers in the business, and I was very lucky in that regard because they made sure that I had the information I needed and that every council member did, and so I relied on that.
Did you
And
ever
that,
make a mistake and have to go back or want to change a vote, or was provided more information afterwards and said, hey, this is something that we need to change?
well, if I did, it was rare.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that happening very often because really we have a very good staff. I'm sure you do too, and you did too when you were in Mayor and Flagstaff. And they provided us with really good information, and I totally depended on them, relied on them. Like I say, two of the best managers in the business, one of whom is still there. So I couldn't have done my job without. And I said that more than once. I couldn't have done my job without the city manager
Mm-hmm.
because every council member meets with the manager prior to the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I relied on is primarily the packet that we got and the city manager to give me the information I needed. And we hired a very good city manager. You better hire a good one because I couldn't literally do my job without them.
A good city manager and a good city attorney.
And a good city attorney, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I relied more on the man. That's who the council members met with and the mayor meets with prior to the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave me a chance to ask any questions I had about the packet, and I made sure I had the information I needed, so I felt comfortable making a decision. So it didn't matter to me. I hate to say that. I care what the public thinks, but it's not the critical factor because, and it's not their fault. They can't know everything. Most people don't understand how government really works. Most people don't. That's just normal. You can't expect most people to understand how government works. So I think you need to understand that there's nothing wrong with believing that, that people aren't meant to, everybody can't understand it.
And so what do you think about this concept of partisanship, right? Because it seems like now there's a lot of partisanship down at the local level that, quite frankly, I was shocked to see toward the end, right?
Mm.
I know that I looked at the fact that, at the local level, you're elected in a nonpartisan fashion.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, here in the city of Flagstaff, there were no districts. You were
Yeah.
elected at large.
Right.
And, and talking to everybody was super important. And I'm not saying that that's happening now or not happening now. It's just that nowadays it just seems to be this heightenedness, for lack of a better way of putting it, of partisanship. And what do you think about that? And do you think that this is a problem?
There isn't a lot of partisanship at the local level. I mean, and it's correct to say it's not part of the process. We don't run as partisans. And so I just never made that part of my thinking at all. Because it just isn't. That's the way the law is written. You run nonpartisan, and that's the way I behaved. I never took that into consideration. As you said, like Flagstaff doesn't have districts. Sedona, no city is. There are a few cities that are big enough to have districts work. So most cities don't have districts, and I think Phoenix does, and I think Tucson does. But outside of those two cities, I don't know that anybody else does. And so you do just have to, and shouldn't, you do work for the city as a whole, and that's the way it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I say that I think if everyone had to go had everybody who was currently elected now had to be a mayor at one point,
Yeah.
I think things would be different, or even have to be members of council. So what do you think about this issue of partisanship as we get to the state and federal levels?
It's more likely to enter into things then, but it still is. I don't like partisanship. I don't think anybody should make decisions based on partisanship at any level, frankly. It's
Yeah.
easy. It's easier to ignore it though at the local level. It gets harder the further up the chain you go, to state and federal. It's just harder to ignore it. But I did ignore it.
What do you think about the concept of statesmanship?
Statesmanship, that was interesting. Of course, when you asked me to participate, I first thing I did was look up the definition, and it's. I tend to think of statesmanship related more to national and international politics than I do to the local level. But it certainly can apply on the local level too. And it's really about how government works. That's what I think. When you look it up, the definition, it's kind of about the uh, um, how is it stated? Anyway, it's about how government works. Basically, it's how government works.
I think. Do you think that there's a difference between an activist and a statesman?
Yes,
What would the
active.
difference be?
I think activists are generally focused on a single subject. There's usually some cause that activists are interested in. I consider myself an activist to some extent still, and I did before I became the mayor. I was usually interested in what was going on at the local level, and I participated. An activist, I think of an activist like a lobbyist. No, they're not. No, that's not right either. But they they have a single. I think they generally have a single issue they're interested in pushing. They're interested in that topic and not in all topics that are relevant to being on council. I don't think activists make good council members, frankly, because it shouldn't be one issue you're interested in. You have to be interested in all issues, no matter how boring they are, and some of them are. A lot of them are. A lot of the things that we voted on, most of the things we voted on were not what you might call sexy issues. They weren't the kind of thing that most people are interested in. So, and you could tell by how many people were at the meeting.
Right. That's very true.
Yeah,
I definitely think that activists are needed because they point out
they
what we're
do.
missing, right? Like they're like, hey, over here, pay attention. This
That's
is
right.
happening. But I do think it's problematic when you have someone on council or someone in any position, whether it be on council, whether it be in the state, whether it be the federal, that's focused only on one issue.
Mhm.
I remember coming in and the issue that I came in on, we settled it before I was sworn in. And then when I got there, it was like, okay, I'm here for 4 years. And we have to deal with water, police and fire, libraries, parks and recreation. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was related to being on council that I didn't think about.
Yeah.
But I was like, hey, I have to learn this stuff. This is important. This is the role of being on council.
I had thought about it because I did get involved with the Arizona League of Cities and Towns very early on, so I knew about it, and I knew it couldn't be just one issue. So I was never, even though I consider myself an activist, and you can be still an activist once you're not the mayor, but I don't think any council member should be an activist either. Frankly, it's better if they aren't, because single focus just isn't what you need to do as a council member, as you found out the hard way, I guess.
And then as mayor, I had a council member, make an announcement at the dais that they had been elected on one issue, and that
Oh,
was the only issue that they were interested in. And I was
oh,
like, man, we have a
wow,
whole lot of other stuff that's going to be an issue. And we kind of need all 7 of us paying attention to it. But
yep.
they made a declaration at the council meeting. I was like,
And how did that work out, Coral? Did they change after they got on council?
No.
Oh, that's sad.
Some people change,
Yeah,
and
some
some
people.
people they change, but some people don't. And I guess
No,
that's a choice, right?
change is tough. Most people are not good at change. I'm pretty adaptable myself. I enjoy change, but it's just not good. You can't be focused on a single issue and be an effective council member, I don't think.
So that leads me to a couple of other things, right?
Okay.
What do you think about our one issue candidates?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about campaign promises? I guess those
Yeah.
are questions.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One issue candidates, as I said, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't serve the city or whatever governing body you're on well to be a one issue person. It's just not, you're not doing your job, in my opinion, if you continue. If you can change, and I think it's possible you can change once you get elected and get the job, take the job on, you can change, but not a lot of people wouldn't. So I don't think it's good. And the second thing was, what was the second thing?
The second thing had to do with campaign promises.
Campaign promises. I don't believe in making campaign promises. I never made campaign promises personally, but a lot of candidates do, and I just don't think it's a good thing to do. You can't keep them. Is why you find out you just can't keep them. Generally, you're going to find out you can't keep your campaign promise. So don't make it. Just take it right from the beginning. Don't make campaign promises. Not a good idea.
Yeah, I think I told you before we came on air that when I first ran as a council member, my first thing was I was going to respond to every single email that I got. And then we had some issue that we had like 1,500 emails, and I just couldn't keep up with the emails. And then someone was like, "You broke your campaign promise." I'm like, you're right. I was unable to do that. So then the second time I ran, people were like, "What are you promising?" I'm promising to do my best to represent the city of Flagstaff. I am not promising anything above and beyond that, because it is, I cannot respond to every email. I do know when I ran for mayor, I was pretty clear that I was like, hey, I'm going to represent everybody in the city, which means I'm going to go out and talk to as many different people in many different places as possible, because I do think that's important. But that was going to be my promise. And I think I did a very good job at that. But there were certain things that I heard other people promising that I'm like, that's against state law, that's against state law. You have to have 4 council members to agree to that. And so far, the other people running have all said they're not in favor of that. So that's going to be really difficult, right? And so what should we be looking for? I guess in just kind of closing out our conversation, what should we as individuals be looking for? There's a lot of elections coming up. And we are in a time where civility seems to be lacking. I would say that we need to have more statesmen. Especially in the leadership roles, helping to move us forward. We talked about the importance of compromise, yet some people seem to think that you should never compromise. And what should we be looking for as people to elect, as people to vote for on all levels, right? Not saying that we're going to 100% agree with everybody, but I do believe, and again, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these podcasts, is that we as the electorate have a responsibility to do our best to elect people who are going to be able to work together on policies that work for all of us. And so what should we be looking for?
People who are willing to actually listen. I think that listening is underrated. We're never taught in school. You never had a class in listening, did you? I never did. That I think is one of the most important things. We all need to know how to listen. But that doesn't mean that you have to do. Just because you listen, people equate listening to doing. So if you listen to what I say, then you're going to do what I say. No, I'm going to listen. Period. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to learn what I can from that. But so you have to be willing to learn. Number one, you have to be a lifelong learner. I think that's critical. You have to be open-minded and willing to change your mind. That's important. You should be able to change your mind. Some people think, oh, no, you should never change your mind. Yes, yes, you should. And so I think you should look for somebody who is willing to compromise. I think that's important. I'd ask somebody who's running for any office, are you willing to compromise? And if they say no, don't vote for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very fair statement. I also think it's important for us to be looking for people who are willing to basically go out and interact with more than just the usual people that they interact with. I think that that's extremely important. I think that, you know, if you're going to represent a diversity of people, you should try to then engage. You can't engage with everybody, you know, like you said, it's impossible to engage with everybody. And some people don't want to be engaged with, and some people don't want to talk to you, right? But I do think it's important that you go out and put yourselves in different situations than you're normally in, you know, because you have the ability to be exposed and to learn from different people. And I guess that does lead me to my absolute last question. If you let me do it, what role, if any, do you think the concept of empathy plays in leadership?
Empathy is important. Empathy is understanding, and it's a critical part of understanding people. If you can't, and that's your position, you are representing those people, like it or not, you are. And so when I was mayor, if I got invited to go somewhere, I went to any group that wanted me to come. I went and I listened. And you have to have empathy. Now, if you don't have empathy, and there are definitely current politicians who don't have empathy, I won't name names. I don't think I have to. But it is important because that's who you're representing. You need to understand people, and listening is really critical. I've said that. I learned that a long time ago. Is I wish we'd all had a course in school. They ought to teach it in school. I think it'd be hard to find somebody able to teach it, probably, but I really do think it is important. You need to be able to listen, but that doesn't equate with doing what you hear. You still have to just do what you think is best for this, in my case, on city politics, for the city as a whole. If you're a state politician, you need to focus on what's good for the state as a whole. It's just, that's really important, and empathy is critical for sure. It's important that you understand people.
So empathy, compromise, listening.
Yes.
Those are the three big takeaways from our conversation.
I think that's good. I think those are good takeaways.
Well, I totally appreciate you being on the show, Mayor Sandy. Like I had said, behind the scenes, I was really excited when you accepted the opportunity to be on the show, for us to have this conversation, because I had a chance to serve with you, and I admired your tenacity and you know, your calm demeanor and your civil tone. And I just really appreciate having this conversation live with you.
Well, it was a privilege, an honor, and a privilege to be here with you, Coral, and I really enjoyed seeing you. I always do enjoy anytime I can.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is the our show here today with Mayor Sandy, former mayor of the city of Sedona. And look for our next episode. I believe we have another mayor next week. And check us out on our YouTube channel. See ya.
Thank you.